Hey gang, and welcome back. This week we have some new faces, new commanders, and a new gameplay. This week I'm playing my Titania Protector of Argoth deck. Matt is playing his Bosh Iron Golem deck. Sean is playing his Ertai the Corrupted deck. And Mike, who's new to the channel, is playing Tajic, Blade of the Legions. For openers, I keep a hand with Regrowth, Natural Affinity, Sylvan Library, Bant Panorama, Snow-Covered Forest, Elemental Bond, and Fyndhorn Elves. Matt's opener has Colossus of Akros, Hellkite Tyrant, Hedron Archive, Scrap Trawler, Fire Diamond, Soul Ring, and Mountain. Sean's opener has 2 islands, Fleshbag Marauder, Anguished Unmaking, Mentor of the Meek, Sidisi Undead Vizier, and Orzhov Basilica. Mike's opener had 3 planes, Naya Panorama, Gilded Lotus, Karmic Guide, and Enlightened Tutor. Matt wins the die roll and starts us off. For turn 1, Matt plays a Mountain, casts a Soul Ring, and then taps a Soul Ring to cast Fire Diamond before passing to me. My turn also features a bit of ramp, and I play a Snow-Covered Forest and cast Fyndhorn Elves before passing to Mike. Mike plays a Plains and passes to Sean. Sean plays an Island and passes back to Matt. Matt plays a Mountain and then taps Soul Ring and a Mountain to cast Pristine Talisman. He then taps Pristine Talisman, Fire Diamond, and a Mountain to cast Scrap Trawler and gain 1 life from the Talisman. For my turn, I play Bant Panorama for my land for turn and cast Sylvan Library before moving to combat. For my combat step, Fyndhorn Elves smashes into Sean for a huge 1-hole damage. At the end of my turn, Mike casts Enlightened Tutor to put Combustible Gearhulk on the top of his library. For his turn, Mike draws the Combustible Gearhulk and plays a Mountain before passing to Sean. For his turn, Sean plays Orzhov Basilica, bouncing the island back to his hand, and at the end of his turn, he's forced to discard a card, and Sidisi Undead Vizier goes to his graveyard. Matt plays a Mountain for his turn, and then continues to ramp like he's playing green, tapping Soul Ring, Fire Diamond, and Pristine Talisman, gaining 1 life to cast Hedron Archive. With nothing else, he passes to me. During my draw step, I use Sylvan Library's ability to look at the top 3 cards. I opt to pay 8 life to keep the 2 extra cards, and move to my main phase. I then opt to play Dust Bowl for my land for turn, and tap Fyndhorn Elves to cast Burgeoning. Tapping Dust Bowl, I crack Bant Panorama to find a Snow-Covered Forest, and pass my turn to Mike. For Mike's turn, he draws a card and plays Naya Panorama, which reveals that I have no lands in my hand to play with Burgeoning. With nothing else, he passes to Sean. Sean plays an island for his turn and casts Mentor of the Meek before passing to Matt. Matt hits his land drop for turn and is able to cast an 8-drop in the form of Colossus of Arcos on turn 4. He also gains 1 life from tapping Pristine Talisman. Moving to combat, Scrap Trawler attacks Mike for 3. For my turn, I only take 4 from Sylvan Library this turn, keeping 1 extra card, and I move to my first main phase. I play Windswept Heath for my land drop, and then cast Tempt with Discovery. Everyone opts to find an extra land, and I miscount and I only take 3 lands out, but I do correct myself within a few seconds after my turn. I use this opportunity to find Mouth of Ronom, Wooded Foothills, Snow-Covered Forest, and once I realize my error, Crystal Veins. Mike chooses to find Temple of Triumph and also cracks Naya Panorama at the same time. Matt finds Shrine of the Forsaken Gods, and Sean grabs Arcane Sanctum. With no creatures to attack, I choose to pass to Mike. For Mike's turn, he plays a Plains and casts Tajic, Blade of the Legion, before passing to Sean. Sean's turn is a bit spicier, and he plays a Swamp and casts Silverport Cutthroat. He opts not to pay for Mentor of the Meek's triggered ability, and instead casts Fleshbag Marauder, forcing us all to sacrifice a creature. Sean lets the Marauder go to the graveyard, and we each lose 1 life, and Sean gains 1 life. Matt chooses to let his Scrap Trawler die, unfortunately, instead of his Colossus. I'm forced to kill Fyndhorn Elves, and Mike's forced to kill his commander. With nothing else, he passes to Matt. Matt plays a Mountain for his turn, and then pays a ton of mana and gains 1 life from Pristine Talisman to make his Colossus of Akros monstrous. Spending all of 3 seconds deciding who to attack, Colossus smashes into me for 20. For my turn, unfortunately my life total does not allow me to draw any extra cards with Sylvan Library, and I'm forced to only draw 1. It's a pretty good card, however, and I cast Courser of Krufix in my first main phase. I crack Wooded Foothills, taking 1 damage but gaining 1 life as the land comes into play thanks to Courser of Krufix. I then tap 3 lands and crack Crystal Veins to cast Titania, who brings back Crystal Veins when she enters the battlefield. This nets me 1 very much needed life. I then cast Claws of Gix as a way to sacrifice some of my lands should I need it, and I pass to Mike. Mike plays a Plains for his turn and taps 5 mana to cast Gilded Lotus. He then taps the Lotus in his Temple of Triumph to cast Steretti, pitching 2 cards and drawing 2 cards. The cards he chooses to discard are Hellkite Igniter and Combustible Gearhulk. Sean unfortunately misses his land drop for turn and casts Azorius Signet before moving to combat. During his combat step, Sean swings all of his creatures at Matt, dealing 3. Whether he's bluffing or not, Sean leaves a ton of mana open and passes to Matt. Matt's first main phase sees Hellkite Tyrant come into play, and he moves straight to combat, swinging the Colossus at Mike for 20. Sean's ready for this, however, and hopes to buy some good faith with Mike by casting Anguished Unmaking, taking 3 life, but exiling the Colossus before any damage is dealt. Matt unfortunately is unable to do anything about this, and Colossus gets exiled. With nothing else, Matt passes to me. For my turn, everyone starts taunting me to pay 8, and unfortunately I can't, but I do get to manipulate the top of my library, drawing Life's Legacy and allowing me to put a snow-covered forest on top. I then play that snow-covered forest and gain 1 life for no other reason than being amazing. Also, Courser of Crufix. I then cast Elemental Bond, which is a fantastic draw engine in Titania. I then crack Windswept Heath, not losing or gaining any life, and I gain a 5/3 elemental and draw a card. Moving to combat, Titania smashes into Matt for some much needed revenge. Matt decides to tap Pristine Talisman to stem some of the life loss, but it is still commander damage. With nothing else, I pass to Mike. Mike plays Exotic Orchard for his land drop for turn, and I get to put a snow-covered forest thanks to Burgeoning and gain 1 life. Mike is unhappy with the board state and moves to cast Wrath of God, and my inner spike forces me to cast Natural Affinity. In response, Mike floats 3 mana from his remaining lands and lets the effect happen. We also all lose 7 and Sean gains 7 thanks to Zulaport Cutthroat triggering off his lands. I also get to draw 11 cards as 11 5/3 elementals come into play and trigger elemental bonds 11 times. Mike, however, does not let that mana go to waste, and he casts Karmic Guide, bringing back Hellkite Igniter. Unfortunately, a board full of elementals and a grip full of cards can't save me from a flying, hasty Hellkite Igniter. With my death on his hands and his combat step over, Mike upticks to ready but chooses not to pitch any cards and passes to Sean. Sean plays a Ghost Quarter for his turn and passes to Matt. Matt, who's been seemingly unaffected by this land wipe, is able to cast Thopter Assembly and passes to Mike. On Mike's upkeep, he's unable to pay for Karmic Guide's Echo cost, and the Angel goes to his graveyard. He taps Gilded Lotus, generating 3 red mana, and casts Hangerback Walker with a 1/1 counter on it. Mike then uses Doretti's first minus ability to swap Hangerback Walker and Combustible Gearhulk. With Hangerback Walker dying, he gets a 1/1 flying Thopter token, and Combustible Gearhulk comes into play and he chooses Matt as its target. Matt opts to let Mike draw 3 cards, and one of those cards happens to be Gamble, which Mike then casts. Unfortunately, much the way that Gamble works, the card that Mike found was a card that he discarded, and Soul Ring goes to the graveyard. Moving to combat, Mike swings his Igniter at Sean for 5. Sean unfortunately misses his land drop for turn and is unable to do anything, so he passes to Matt. On Matt's upkeep, Thopter Assembly goes back to his hand and he gets 5 1/1 flying Thopters. During his first main phase, Matt casts Semblance Anvil, exiling Thopter Assembly, which reduces all of his creature and artifact spells by 2. He also gains 1 life as Pristine Talisman was tapped in the process. Matt then casts Goblin Welder and passes turn. Mike plays a Plains for his turn and casts Slowbad. Mike sacrifices Combustible Gearhulk to Slowbad, giving Gilded Lotus indestructible. He then uses Doretti's minus ability again, sacrificing the Thopter to bring back Combustible Gearhulk, once again targeting Matt. Not wanting to take damage, Matt once again allows Mike to draw 3 cards. Mike then taps his only Plains, casting Steel Shaper's Gift to find Sword of the Animist. Deciding it's better to keep his creatures as blockers, Mike passes to Sean. Sean unfortunately is still unable to draw any lands, and he's forced to pass to Matt. Matt also misses his land drop, but still has enough mana to cast Bosh, Iron Golem. Moving to combat, 1 Thopter smashes into Sean for 1. During his second main phase, Matt taps Goblin Welder, sacrificing the attacking Thopter to bring back Scrap Trawler. For Mike's turn, Inventor's Fair comes into play, and he taps the Gilded Lotus to cast Chromatic Lantern. Then, using his 2 lands, Mike casts Sword of the Animist. Moving to combat, Hellkite Igniter swings at Matt, but unfortunately gets chump blocked by a Thopter. Sean unfortunately still doesn't draw a land and passes to Matt. Matt plays a Mountain for his turn, and then pays 4 to cast Darksteel Reactor, but preferring to keep his creatures back as blockers, he passes to Mike. During Mike's upkeep, he gains 1 from Inventor's Fair, and Mike plays a Mountain for his land drop. He then upticks to ready, pitching Ranger of Eos, drawing 1 card. Mike then equips his Combustible Gearhulk with the Sword of Animist, and moves to combat, swinging Hellkite Igniter and Combustible Gearhulk at Matt. Sword of the Animist triggers, and Mike gets to find a Plains, and Matt chooses to have Scrap Trawler and a Thopter token block his 2 attackers. During Mike's second main phase, he casts Outpost Siege, naming Khans. With nothing left to do, he passes to Sean. Sean, in a shocking turn of events, is able to play a Swamp, and slowly claws his way back into this game. He casts Commander Sphere, and then taps the sphere to cast Graph Harvest. Happy to have been able to do something this turn, Sean passes to Matt. At the end of Sean's turn, Matt taps Pristine Talisman to gain 1 life. During his first main phase, Matt plays a Mountain. Matt then pays 4 and has Bosh throw itself at Combustible Gearhulk. Mike decides not to use Slowbad and lets the Combustible Gearhulk go to the graveyard. With the activated ability resolving, and having let Bosh go to his graveyard, Matt taps Goblin Welder, sacrificing a Thopter to bring back his general. I gotta give it to Matt, cause all of this effort has been just so that Bosh can fling itself once again, this time choosing Hellkite Igniter as its target. Deciding that he's flung his general enough times, Matt passes his turn. On Mike's upkeep, he gains 1 life thanks to Inventor's Fair, and then exiles 1 card from Outpost Siege, which happens to be a Plains. Mike chooses to play the Plains that he gets from Outpost Siege, and pays 2 mana to equip Sword of Animist onto Slowbad. Moving to combat, Slowbad swings at Matt, finding Mike a mountain, and dealing 2 damage to Matt. During his second main phase, Mike chooses to have Duretti use his -2 ability, sacrificing Sword of the Animist to bring back Combustible Gearhulk. Once again, Mike targets Matt with a trigger. This time, Matt decides to take the damage, and Mike reveals Evolving Wilds, World Slayer, and Spawning Pit, dealing Sambid damage to Matt. Mike then casts Tamio's Journal, and drops his own Goblin Welder before passing turn. Sean draws a card for his turn, and in his first main phase, cycles Ash Barrens, finding a swamp. He then plays that swamp and casts Graveborn Muse before passing to Matt. During Matt's upkeep, he upticks Darksteel Reactor, and moves to his draw step, drawing a card. Matt draws a Combustible Gearhulk of his own, and casts it, choosing Mike to be his target. Not wanting Matt to fill his hand back up, Mike chooses to take the damage, and Matt reveals 2 mountains and Spine of Ish-Sah, which also just so happens to be 7 damage. Matt then uses Goblin Welder to once again sacrifice a Thopter to bring back Bosh. On Mike's turn, he has 3 triggers during his upkeep, and he gets a clue token from Tamio's Journal, exiles the top card, which is a mountain thanks to Outpost Siege, and gains 1 life from Inventor's Fair. Mike plays the mountain for his land drop for turn, and then upticks Duretti to pitch Wormcoil Engine, drawing 1 card. Mike's Goblin Welder is also up to shenanigans, and he sacrifices the clue token to bring back Wormcoil Engine. Mike then casts Nahiri the Harbinger, discarding a card and drawing a card. Moving to combat, Combustible Gearhulk swings at Sean for 6, and during his second main phase, Mike decides to make an indestructible blocker by recasting his general. On Sean's upkeep, thanks to Graveborn Muse, he loses 1 life to draw an extra card. Unfortunately, neither of the cards that he drew this turn are lands, so he casts Karmic Guide, bringing back Sidisi Undead Vizier. Sean finds Terramorphic Expanse and cracks it to find an island before passing to Matt. At the end of Sean's turn, Matt uses Bosh to fling Combustible Gearhulk, dealing 6 damage to Mike. On Matt's upkeep, Darksteel Reactor gains another counter, and he moves to his main phase. During his first main phase, Matt taps Soul Ring and Fire Diamond to cast Commander's Sphere, and then taps Goblin Welder, sacrificing Fire Diamond to bring back Combustible Gearhulk. Matt once again chooses Mike, and Mike decides to let Matt draw 3 cards this time. One of those cards happens to be Scuttling Doom Engine, which Matt just happens to cast. Matt is then able to drop Energy Chamber for free thanks to Semblance Anvil, and opts to have Bosh throw Scuttling Doom Engine at Mike, dealing 12 damage thanks to its Death Trigger and Bosh. Matt also gains 1 life as Pristine Talisman was tapped to pay for the cost. At the end of Matt's turn, Mike sacrifices Wormcoil Engine and Combustible Gearhulk to give Gilded Lotus indestructible. On Mike's upkeep, he gains 1 life, gets a clue thanks to Tamio's Journal, and Outpost Siege, in my experience this is the only time it's ever happened, hits another land. During his first main phase, Mike plays the Mountain from Outpost Siege as his land drop for turn, and then taps the Goblin Welder, sacrificing the clue to bring back Combustible Gearhulk for what must be the 17th time. Matt lets Mike draw 3 cards, after which Mike then sacrifices all of his artifacts to Slowbad. Sean, knowing fully well what Mike's about to cast, sacrifices his Command Sphere to draw a card. Matt also clues in and sacrifices his own Command Sphere to draw a card. And with those 2 activated abilities resolving, Mike casts Scrap Mastery, the Living Death for artifacts. Mike gets back a ton of artifacts, one of which happens to be Combustible Gearhulk again. With the trigger on the stack, Mike chooses Matt, and Matt lets Mike draw 3 cards. Matt also gets to bring back some artifacts, and Spine of Ish-Sah, Scuttling Doom Engine, and Scrap Trawler come back into play. Matt decides to have Spine of Ish-Sah destroy Mike's World Slayer. Mike then casts Darksteel Forge, a card which would have helped him a second ago had it already been on the field. Mike then equips Sword of the Animist onto Tajic, and moves to combat, swinging his general at Matt. This triggers Sword of the Animist, finding a basic for Mike, and Matt takes 3 damage from Mike's general. Mike then upticks Duretti, pitching 2 cards to draw 2 cards, and upticks Nahiri but chooses not to discard a card. He then passes to Sean. On Sean's upkeep, he loses 2 life to draw 2 cards from the zombies, and then draws a card for turn. During his first main phase, Sean plays a Plains and then casts Dimir Signet. He follows this up by casting Grey Merchant of Asphodel, draining everyone for 7 and gaining 14 life. With nothing else, he passes to Matt. Unfortunately for Matt, he doesn't draw a land for turn, but this doesn't stop him from doing things, and he taps Goblin Welder, sacrificing Spine of Ish-Sah to bring back his general, Bosh, Iron Golem. As Spine goes to the graveyard from the battlefield, Matt is able to return it to his hand. With exactly enough mana, Matt is able to sacrifice Scuttling Doom Engine, dealing 6 damage to Mike, and having Bosh deal 6 damage to Sean. Unable to do anything else, Matt passes to Sean. On Sean's upkeep, he takes 3 damage, draws 3 cards, and then moves to his draw step. Sean drops a swamp for his turn, and then casts Liliana's Mastery, creating 2 2/2 zombie tokens, and pumping all of his zombies by +1/+1. Sean then casts Lightning Greaves and equips one of the zombies with the boots. Moving to combat, Sean swings Graveborn Muse, Grey Merchant, the Zombie Token, and Sidisi at Matt. Fearing no zombie, plus the fact that they all have Menace, Matt decides to take it straight to the face. For Matt's turn, unfortunately he misses his land drop, and flings Bosh at Sean for 8. He then taps Goblin Welder, sacrificing Scrap Trawler to bring back Combustible Gearhulk. Sean allows Matt to draw 3 cards, but unfortunately none of them are enough to stop the onslaught that's coming next turn, and Matt scoops it up. That was a long game. I died really early on in it. That being said, it was a lot of fun, and Combustible Gearhulk did so much work this game. Mike had a firm grasp on the game, despite the fact that I set everyone back to 0 lands. Unfortunately, he missed a few opportunities, such as Nahiri exiling Matt's Goblin Welder, that pretty much cost him the game. Matt's Bosh deck is always hilarious, and I love the fact that Bosh can fling itself to deal damage to other players. At the beginning of this video, and the way that the mid-game played out, I don't think anyone could have predicted Sean pulling a win out like that, but he did, and it was great. Sean chose Ertai the Corrupted to be his Esper Zombie Tribal Commander, because right now they don't have many options. It was really cool to see, even with the fact that Sean didn't play his commander. Please be sure to tune in every Monday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed video, with another video popping up during the week. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta, or watch me on Twitch at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in part by support from my Patreons. If you're looking to help out the channel, please feel free to visit the link below or in the About section. As always, thank you guys for watching, and please be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more.